All right, and I believe we are live here. Thanks everyone for hopping in today. Today we're going to be talking about all things Moonbeam. We've got some of Moonbeam's core contributors and some ecosystem leads. We're going to go over the Moonbeam Messari Q3 report, and then we're going to cover some relevant topics across the Moonbeam ecosystem, across core development, governance, and the whole gauntlet. Before we get started, I'd like to make some introductions. I'll get going first here, and then I'll hand it off. My name's Nick Garcia. I am a research manager with Messari. Been with Messari for about 3 years now, primarily covering base layers, but have a pretty discretionary coverage mandate at this point. I've been covering Moonbeam for a while now. It's been phenomenal to watch the growth and the evolution of the ecosystem, so I am excited to be here with some of the core contributors. I'm going to hand it off to Ryan.
GM, good morning and happy Friday. My name is Ryan Levy. I'm the head of BD here at the Moonbeam Foundation. I get to look after all things BD, partnerships, and go-to-market, and work with the rest of this incredible team. I'll hand off to Siko.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Siko Nates. I'm head of ecosystem development. I work very closely with Ryan. I look after grants, among other things, and a big part of my focus is gaming for Moonbeam as well. And yeah, I'll hand it over to Luke.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. My name is Luke Youngblood. I'm a founding contributor at Moonwell. We're one of the first and longest-lived apps on Moonbeam, and couldn't be more excited to talk to you about some of the cool things happening in the Moonbeam ecosystem.
And hey, everyone. I'm Aaron Evans. I'm head of operations at the Moonbeam Foundation. I've been with the foundation since it was created, and through our network launches and so forth. And it's been a pleasure working with all of the people here over the course of Moonbeam's history, and I'm really excited to be here today.
Thanks, guys. So now I want to walk through the Moonbeam Q3 report. Can someone just confirm for me they can see the actual report? Yeah. Okay. So let's. So here we've got the Moonbeam key metrics overview table from Q3. Look, I'm not going to go through every line, but Moonbeam has had a lot of positives to talk about. The market's been up and down, obviously, but Moonbeam's showing signs of growth throughout. So here we've got the market cap of Moonbeam, or I should say Glimmer. I don't think we need to talk about this too much. Everyone can go on CoinGecko, but it's been mirroring pretty closely the broader crypto market cap. Here we've got transaction fees. So transaction fees, the way we calculate them is a combination of total transactions and the average fee, and that'll give you your network transaction fees. If you want to convert that to the dollar amount, you would just obviously use the dollar value of the Glimmer asset. Here we've got one that compares Moonbeam addresses and transactions. And the title I have here is that Moonbeam is the second leading parachain by active addresses. So for those who are not familiar with the Polkadot parachain ecosystem, you've got at this point 50 plus parachains. Moonbeam has consistently been among the top 3, often ranking 1 or 2 by address activity with Nodal. So I'll pause here for a second. I don't know if anyone from the Moonbeam team wants to talk about some of the activity we've been seeing on the network.
Sure. I mean, I can jump in. Yeah. I mean, I think, as you can see in the graph, there's been sort of some periods of higher activity and lower activity. I think that is kind of broadly in line with kind of the market over the past year. I think, Moonbeam's use case, when you're comparing other parachains, for example, Nodal, when you're building these parachains with Substrate, it's, the transactions can kind of be anything. I think like as an EVM, ours are a little more easily understood or common, but it can be a little bit like comparing apples and oranges. I kind of still am of the opinion I think Moonbeam is the one with the most activity and so forth. But we've had throughout the year different sort of applications that have launched and NFT mints and stuff, so that can cause some of this stuff to be a little bit bumpy. But we're pretty pleased with the activity we've been seeing.
Yeah, agreed. I think if anyone's been on crypto Twitter lately, there's been a lot of discussion around addresses as a metric. They can somewhat be misleading. Different applications tend to have different levels of address and transaction activity. So this is what we have for now. I think we're working on some better metrics over time. Here we've got the XCM activity over time. Lastly, we've got TVL. You can see there was a spike in TVL, both denominated in USD and Glimmer at the end of the quarter. And then lastly, we've got stablecoin volume or stablecoin supply on Moonbeam, which saw a sharp increase at the end of the quarter, primarily driven by USDC. That's the end of the deck real quick. I want to get into some agenda items, but I'll give anyone else on the call one more chance to chat about anything they saw throughout the deck if they'd like.
Yeah, I guess maybe perhaps one other thing that I'd be remiss not to call out is, and I think we're going to get to some of the awesome stuff that's packed into Moonbeam, but
Totally.
We do have some features that allow for gasless transactions and bundling transactions and so forth. And that also can kind of like hide some of the details around the actual true number of active wallets and true transaction volume, because if you're packing a whole bunch and then executing it as a single transaction. So we are working with a partner to be able to better expose that to our community and so forth. So I thought I'd throw that out, but yeah, as you mentioned, Nick, a lot of great positives that despite the market sort of swings and so forth, there are a lot of positive things to draw upon here.
Yeah, if I can add something from an application perspective, what we've seen in just the last couple months is we have definitely seen an uptick in the supply of XC USD coin and XC Tether. So if you're not familiar with what those are, they're cross-chain assets, or XCM, and they're coming from the Asset Hub. So it's been really nice to see just the last few weeks, especially. You can kind of see that little uptick on the chart there, to see that new liquidity coming in. And I think that's being driven largely by StellaSwap. StellaSwap has some really nice incentives right now on those markets. And that's also helping to increase stablecoin liquidity on Moonbeam in general. We've seen higher inflows of stablecoin supply on Moonwell also. So that's a positive thing to see. And, like Aaron mentioned, some of these newer technologies like bundlers and passkey wallets that are starting to be supported will actually make stablecoin adoption a bit easier on Moonbeam.
Yeah, thanks for that. All right, so jumping off of that point, I think another thing that we've seen on Moonbeam is pretty strong developer activity. And in parallel with that, there's been a huge push on Moonbeam Gaming particularly. So would love to hear from Ryan, what are some of Moonbeam's other initiatives and some other product features that you think are underrated at this point in time?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. So one of the things that we've done is, of course, as you mentioned already, we're in EVM L1, which essentially you can build anything, almost anything on top of. But what we've decided to do is really streamline and focus on where we can provide a lot of extended support and where we're seeing a lot of traction in the market. So we've broken that almost down into 4 pillars. So DeFi, DePIN, RWAs, and gaming. I'll leave the gaming part to Seiko because I know he's going to talk about that a bit later on. But from a DeFi, DePIN, and RWA perspective, we've actually seen a lot of uptick in traction, in projects actually building. We even played part in RWA Day recently at Permissionless. And so as you see the uptick and the attention on RWAs as a whole, we're seeing a lot more of these projects actually choose Moonbeam to build on top of, which I think a little bit later on we'll talk about some of the flows and whatever else. From a product perspective, so Aaron already mentioned this, as did Luke, but batch precompile, which basically allows us to, or developers to actually bundle transactions, but only needing to actually sign it once. And the other piece is going to be call permit, which allows for gasless transactions for end users, so anybody using the dApps as such. Luke mentioned very greatly the support for passkeys and ZK Auth, so great support for smart wallets, and more importantly, as I like to say goodbye to seed phrases. make it really a lot easier for people to onboard and transact on chain. And then lastly is, Moonbeam does provide true on-chain governance. And some of the stuff that we've done is even included allowing us to do an upgrade without the need for a hard fork. We recently saw an 8x increase or 8 times increase in throughput, as well as halving actual block times. So just a bunch of the features that we've seen and spoken about recently from a product perspective. And lastly, what I should mention is FIDI, which is actually an analytics reporting platform that we're working very closely with to make sure that we get true, transparent, and clear analytics from the dApps building on Moonbeam as a whole.
Yeah, Moonbeam's had a lot of technical developments that have either come live or coming down the pipeline. So I think that's exciting to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Coming off of that, Moonbeam also had the Moonrise Points campaign. Okay, so would love to hear what some of the key learnings were from that, some of the highlights, and then anything we can look forward to from an ecosystem initiative or a grant perspective. I know Siko's been working on some of that related stuff, so would love to hear anything related to that.
Yeah, sure, Nick. I mean, yeah, so we did do this Moonrise Points campaign over the summer, kind of starting at end of July, beginning of August, and then finishing in September. So this was very much aimed at like kind of highlighting and I think magnifying the effect of our ecosystem incentives. So periodically we do these like very large grant cycles for the DeFi ecosystem, and we really wanted to kind of do a whole bunch of marketing around that, do promotion, like kind of drive people to actually like use the application forth. We're very pleased with the outcome. I think we had over 3. So basically, we work with Airlift. They build a questing platform for us. We had over 330,000 individual quests completed over that 2-month period. More than 9,000 participants. We're pretty happy as well with the conversion rate. Of I mean, there are an amount of people that basically just doing the social activities such as retweeting or posting a YouTube video, but we are pretty happy with kind of how that translated in on-chain activity. We know that we did better there than kind of what the typical industry average conversion rate is. And yeah, I mean, in terms of key takeaways and learnings, I think for other people doing this, I think one thing we really did maybe a little bit differently than what other teams did was like we were really very focused on kind of tracking how this went on week-to-week basis and kind of redoing the quests or changing them up to kind of continue to keep engagement up. So every week at the end of the week we would run spend a lot of time kind of running like stats and analytics, trying to figure out what quests were appealing, which ones to get new in there, just to kind of make sure that when you're running this over 2 months that it doesn't go stale, right? It's a relatively long period. And I think, that did pay off. I think, there were various points where we could see kind of, in response to the changes that we made or kind of outreach that we did or Twitter spaces that we did, that we saw market upticks kind of in activity right after we kind of completed that. And I think the other thing is like, it was kind of originally very aimed at, the 5 teams that it receives kind of these ecosystem incentives. But as the campaign went on, we had more and more teams in the Moonbeam ecosystem kind of reaching out and wanting to be part of this. So if we were to do it again, I think we would probably cast a wider net, given how successful this was for a bunch of the teams. Last thing I'll say is like, Airlift was an amazing partner in this. They built a questing platform for us. These guys were, I mean, they often worked on the weekends and late at night, and they were very, very quick on implementing changes. So we're super happy with the partnership. In terms of upcoming items from an ecosystem perspective, so yeah, like I mean, gaming is a big focus for us. We early in the year did this investment in Nemus. They're a gaming infrastructure company. One thing that they're building for us is a tournament system that is going to go live in the next 2 to 3 weeks. And so the way that will work is that basically, there'll be various games on Moonbeam. People can play those. They'll earn scores in those games, and Nemus will aggregate all those into a per game leaderboard. We're going to incentivize the top of the leaderboard. So basically, we'll be running short campaigns, 1 week long, where people can co-play these games, compete against one another. If you get to the top of the leaderboard, you'll win prizes. And there are kind of a couple of interesting mechanics with meme tokens and NFTs where you can kind of boost your point take. So we're really hoping that that kind of drives a lot of activity to the games. It's a key part of our strategy to help studios on Moonbeam with like user acquisition. And yeah, Nemus has been working at this for almost 8 months, so we're very excited to see kind of the fruition of all that work. But yeah,
tons of development within the Moonbeam ecosystem as well. So pivoting in that direction, would love to hear from Luke some of your most recent developments from Moonwell. For those who are not familiar, Moonwell's been the top protocol by TVL on Moonbeam for as long as I can remember now. So Luke, would love to hear kind of some of your experiences, what we can expect from the community, and just anything you'd want to share with folks.
Yeah, so it's been a pretty big summer for us. We've grown quite a bit in our community. We've added a lot of new users, and a lot of TVL increase has kind of come in just the last month, especially. And it's been a busy summer for the entire Moonwell community. Some of the features we launched recently are Coinbase Smart Wallet support. And while we don't yet have Smart Wallet supported on Moonbeam, we're working really closely with the Moonbeam Foundation and some of the engineers, Piotr and others, that are kind of leading development efforts to add support for the passkey wallets. So there's a new signing curve that's required to enable that support so that you can sign with a secure enclave on your Google or Apple device. And that's a big unlock for usability, because you no longer have to download an app or an extension to use an app like Moonwell. So that's a big thing that just landed over the summer, and working closely with Moonbeam to make that a reality for the Moonbeam community. We've also been, happy to be part of some of the Moonrise Points campaign and some of these other things over the summer. And we're really, we're really actually seeing some nice growth due to like the decrease in block time. So for example, I think Aaron mentioned this, or Ryan mentioned this earlier, that the block times had gone from 12 seconds down to 6 seconds. So that's a 2x improvement. And now, with the fast finality on Moonbeam, you really see those transactions confirm quickly. And then I think the throughput increase as well, there's more parallelism on the backing, has really improved performance also. And we're actually in the middle of a refactor of our front end, just to kind of, we've added a lot of features lately, and we needed to kind of clean things up and make the things faster. And so we have this refactor that's going to land really soon that will hopefully, you'll notice that the performance should increase pretty greatly just for that first load when our app first loads. And we've also been pretty focused on mobile performance and making sure the app works really well on a mobile device, because a lot of people are now starting to use apps like Moonwell on a mobile device only. We're not, as we bring on more users, we're finding that increasingly people just want to use their mobile phone. They don't want to use a desktop computer to interact with apps on Moonbeam. So we're leaning into this sort of mobile first world where with passkey wallets and a nice like progressive web app, users can now actually install the Moonwell app right to their home screen. And so we're really kind of excited about continue to kind of expand our user base of mobile only users.
That, Luke. So we mentioned earlier how some metrics may be somewhat misleading, high noise to low signal ratios. I think what is very high signal to low noise is inflows and outflows to a specific ecosystem, in this case Moonbeam. So Ryan, would love to hear how you're seeing inflows and outflows of the ecosystem. Obviously, we have Moonbeam routed liquidity show. Would love to kind of get your perspective on the flows we've been seeing into the Moonbeam ecosystem lately, and what that might mean from a broader perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to share. So one stat to share, which I think is rather critical, is in the last quarter, we saw about $30 million pass through MRL. So Moonbeam's routed liquidity, great statistic for us. We're very proud of how Moonbeam is being used in the greater ecosystem, which could be either for the parachains or for any apps or dApps building on Moonbeam as a whole. I think what it does, which is really important to me is it echoes one of our key messages, and something that I've got to say I definitely keep sharing out there, which is build here, grow anywhere. I try to get everybody to say it as often as possible, but it's become a mantra of ours because any dApp, any product that actually builds and deploys on top of Moonbeam can then leverage us as a liquidity gateway to get access to about 100 other EVM, 100 other chains out there. So you can build locally, build on top of Moonbeam, and then you want to get access to users, to wallets, to dApps, to TVL, liquidity outside of there. We make it quite simple for users and dApps to actually do so. Another statistic, I actually pulled this up the other day, is we're constantly sitting in the top 15 chains as far as net flows are concerned. And in fact, in the last 7 days, we were sitting in 5th position. So we're sitting amongst a lot of the larger chains that are seeing some huge throughput. And that's from a net flows perspective. So that's both in and out. One of the GMPs, so general messaging protocols, or as some people like to call them, bridges, that has been critical to this success has been Wormhole. Now, we do work with Wormhole XLR Layer 0, but Wormhole has been at the forefront of a lot of these statistics. And I guess lastly, what I could share is we will be adding Glacis shortly, which will also give not just users choice of the actual path that they take to get to this liquidity, but a large number of other added features that will enhance the user experience. And that's one thing I would love to share as well, just because I feel like we ended Luke and Moonwell's piece pretty fast, is I'm an avid user of Moonwell. I love the platform. I love what these guys are building. I think they've been a great example of what a user experience could look like and should look like. I love the mobile first perspective. I think that makes life so much easier. And yeah, I just want to say congrats to Luke, because if anybody's been following what's been happening with Moonwell over particularly the last few months, it is phenomenal, and great to watch your success.
Thanks, Ryan. It's been great to be a part of it.
I'd have to pull up the metrics, but I'd wager that Moonwell has been among the fastest growing applications across all of crypto these last few quarters. So kudos to Luke and the team. So Aaron, I think one of the more interesting things from this last quarter that I saw on Moonbeam was, at the time, what was a community governance proposal around kind of expanding the ecosystem, potentially becoming an Ethereum AVS, actively validated service. So would love to hear more about that. I mean, obviously a huge proposal for many reasons. So would love to hear the logic behind that, what an AVS is, and kind of where that takes the Moonbeam ecosystem moving forward.
Sure. Yeah, no, love to talk about that. So, as you mentioned, AVS, actively validated service. I mean, I think there's a lot of terms being thrown around, and people are, they can be used kind of loosely or whatnot. But I think the idea, right, is to be able to secure really any application, not just say a ledger application that most people think of as chains, through the restaking of existing assets. So there's the main example here being sort of staked Ethereum. And I think this is really interesting for a number of reasons. We think it's, got a lot of potential. So firstly, kind of similar to, the way Polkadot works, it allows, people that are developing a service, like say either a chain or, a bridge or an Oracle, to outsource the security of their network to an existing set of node operators that already have an enormous amount of existing crypto economic security. And this allows service developers to focus on their core business rather than having to deal with that part of decentralization and having sufficient crypto economic security and a whole bunch of node operators. And it continues on this theme of modularization. Again, AVSs are, the idea is that there really could be any kind of service. I think right now there's a big focus on services that are kind of adjacent to rollups, I would say. So, I think a lot of rollups, they have centralized sequencers, or, people are using ZK technology. So you have these like side applications that are doing ZK processing. they tend to start out as kind of centralized, just pretty much everything else does. But the idea here is that now, you can decentralize these things, and you can combine all these different parts and adapt for particular use cases. It's still, I think, pretty nascent. I think that's what we're realizing. It's very early on, and how even the idea of slashing and who's doing a good job. I think when you're checking just that a state transition system like a normal blockchain is correct, like that's fairly straightforward. But when it gets into things like, was the price reported by this Oracle exactly correct? To whatever decimal. It's kind of more of a gray range. It's something you can only look at retroactively. So those things are still kind of being figured out. But I think, the ideas here are very interesting and very sound. Now, just getting back to Moonbeam. So Moonbeam we've always been focused on true Ethereum compatibility. We've always made this a very core focus for us. We have found that when developers are looking at other chain deployments, they're looking at other chains. If you're like, well, it's like Ethereum, but you have to do this, those things are very impactful to them and cause a lot of friction. I think, that maybe isn't always fully appreciated. And so we've always had this kind of really sort of strong link to Ethereum. And so earlier this year, the product development team began working on a new research work stream focused on exploring some sort of extension of Moonbeam, the network, that's designed to bring these ecosystems closer together. So I think, one of the things that's perhaps, just getting back to things that are underrated with Moonbeam, this isn't exactly a product feature, but the substrate framework is very powerful. It's really well designed. You can pretty much build anything. And when you're talking about AVSs, that can be all kinds of different things. Substrate is a just wonderful framework to build on. And so we're looking at this as bringing the power of Substrate over to the Ethereum ecosystem. So by, the research is ongoing, but the idea is starting to kind of take shape for us. The idea would be to launch some form of Moonbeam that links back to the current Moonbeam deployment that is secured by restaking. And doing this, rather than adopting some sort of roll-up framework or something, like if we were to do that, we'd probably have to shed a lot of the substrate technology that we've developed, a lot of really what makes Moonbeam Moonbeam. This would allow us to preserve the core technology, including the underlying substrate palettes, so that we can keep, our forkless upgrades and fast finality and governance and these precompiles and all these wonderful features that we discussed before. And this could really serve for a lot of other projects that are looking to deploy in the restaking ecosystem. Moonbeam may serve as a model for how to build on Substrate in that environment. So I can't, we're still, like I said, in the investigative phase. This space is really nascent. We see a lot of opportunities where we think Moonbeam, that some of the strengths of Moonbeam can be brought to bear to help in this very nascent ecosystem. But we're still trying to zero in on, the use cases that make the most sense, where we can deliver the most value and hopefully drive a lot of traction and new users and use cases and so forth. And so we've been spending a lot of time speaking with the who's who in the ecosystem. We've been talking to, the likes of Eigenlayer and Symbiotic, Avail, LRTs like Renzo, AVSs like eOracle, and also platforms like AltLayer, et cetera. So just really a lot of different players in the space, and we're really, really learning a lot. Really appreciate the time some of these teams are taking to speak with us. We're looking at ways that we can work together to really bolster that ecosystem. I think, we're pretty bullish on what kind of opportunities exist there. So more to come soon. We do owe back to our community kind of a path forward, but yeah, we're really excited about it.
Yeah, very exciting. A huge potential expansion for the Moonbeam ecosystem. I love the way you framed it, Aaron. Bringing the powers of Substrate to kind of the Ethereum ecosystem. I think that's a really powerful framing. So let's pivot now to some community questions. I see one in the chat right here. I'm going to open this up for whoever wants to take it. So the question reads, what conclusions can we draw from Moonwell's rapid growth? What triggered it? Is it all about liquidity? Base and then Moonbeam are both mentioned as well. So Luke, going to hand that one off to you.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, I think I just wanted to mention regarding the AVSs and the potential upgrade paths for Moonbeam. I'm a really big fan of some of these ideas. I think that there are a couple things that Moonbeam has going for it that are actually kind of nice properties to have in terms of if you compare Moonbeam to other like layer 1, layer 2 ecosystems. For example, the fact that you have fast finality where like transactions are immediately confirmed within 6 seconds of a block, and you don't have like this really long finality that you do have on like Ethereum mainnet or the layer 2 rollups where you have to wait for the settlement down to the layer 1. That's a really nice property to have, especially for certain applications that require, you know, instant finality. And I think that there's a lot of potential there in terms of decreasing the cost of economic security for Moonbeam. So for example, this is really the potential that these AVSs have, is that you can dramatically decrease the cost to secure your network, because now you kind of inherit the economic security of Ethereum or Bitcoin or some larger amount of economic security. And so, you know, networks like Polkadot, for example, that have been paying, you know, double-digit APYs to stakers and validators on the Relay chain, they can actually reduce those costs pretty significantly. And so, or the Beacon chain, so they can actually reduce those costs pretty significantly. So I think it has a ton of potential. And, you know, Moonbeam has always been this sort of gateway to Ethereum for Polkadot. And you see that with Moonbeam routed liquidity from Wormhole. And we've actually, you know, partnered really closely with Wormhole to actually make Moonwell a multi-chain application. And so that kind of started last year with our expansion to Base and to Optimism this year. And that has kind of allowed our community to grow and bring in a lot of new users and a lot of new user activity. And we've done our best to kind of make the experience the same across all three of those networks, and to try to kind of imagine a world where the networks you're on, or the network you're on, kind of fades into the background and you don't have to think so much about it. So, you know, all of the new features we've added to support Base and Optimism really enabled us to kind of improve the Moonbeam experience as well for everyone. So for example, you know, we were really early to kind of building out on-chain governance for the Moonwell community on Moonbeam. But as we expanded the Well token to become a multi-chain token using Wormhole, we were able to basically make the governance system of Moonwell multi-chain as well. And then over the summer, due to some improvements in like the gas limit on Moonbeam, where we can actually create really large transactions now that consume a lot of block space, we were able to actually expand our governance to upgrade the Moonwell protocol across all three networks with a single governance proposal. So for example, now we do these regular monthly proposals that are like Moonwell incentive optimization or reward automation proposals, where basically we're taking the liquidity incentives and kind of splitting them across all the markets, across all the networks. Those used to require a different governance proposal for each network, and now we can do it all in one. We call it a cross-chain proposal. And so I think what we're kind of getting into is this world where we're, you know, researching really heavily how to enable chain abstraction, right? How do we make it so that you don't have to think about, okay, I have USD coin in my wallet on this network or this network. How can I just use an app like Moonwell and I don't have to worry about which network I'm on, and that kind of fades into the background? And the way we can do that is by leveraging these general message passing protocols like Wormhole, Axelar Layer 0, and kind of you know, abstracting away which network you're on. And you can kind of see the beginnings of that in the Moonwell app. And so that's really kind of allowed us to grow to, you know, a couple 100,000 users in total over the last few months. And you know, we really feel pretty passionately about continuing to kind of be this bridge between Polkadot and Ethereum, if you will. And in many ways, that's sort of the mirror to what Moonbeam is. Moonbeam is sort of the EVM gateway into the Polkadot ecosystem. And so for developers like us, where we've been building in Solidity and EVM for the last few years, it's really nice to kind of have that property of being able to be like this connective tissue to all of the parachains and the best assets on Polkadot, and all of the layer 2s and the best assets on Ethereum as well.
Thanks for that, Luke. Any other community questions? Anyone want to fire anything away while we have the core team here?
While we're waiting for questions, I'll just comment like the multi-chain proposals that we're passing now, because they have to set the like incentive speed for so many markets across so many networks. These multi-chain governance proposals now have something like 145 individual calls or Ethereum contract calls in a single governance proposal across 3 different networks. And I think we may have set some world records in the Moonwell community for the most governance actions. And now we can actually, through automation, we can, once the proposal successfully passes, we can push that call data down to all 3 of the networks. The hub is on Moonbeam, but it gets pushed to Optimism and Base, and then that multi-chain proposal executes simultaneously across all 3 of those networks after the time lock expires. So it's really quite interesting to see kind of like this future, where you don't have to think about what network you're on. It's an analogy I like to use is that when mobile phones first arrived, maybe they were a little bit clunky, but now you don't really think about the fact that I can send, like a WhatsApp message to my friend that's on Verizon if I'm on AT&T. You don't really have to think about, how to transfer data between different mobile phone networks. And I think that this will happen with Ethereum networks as well, just like Moonbeam and all the other layer 1, layer 2s on the Ethereum ecosystem side as well.
Yeah, it really is amazing. The the governance proposals the cross-chain governance proposals that the Moonwell team is developed. It's really cool thing to see.
Awesome. So it doesn't seem like we have too many questions from the community. I would point everyone to read the Messari report. That'll answer most of it. But actually, as I say that, we get a nice question in here asking about DevCon plans. So anyone from this call want to talk about DevCon and any plans Moonbeam might have?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to. Although I want to share a stat that we just received here. There are just over 1,500 live viewers right now, which is pretty darn cool. We're streaming this across 3 different platforms. So hey to everybody, all of our 1,500 new friends. DevCon. So that is set to be an incredible event, probably the last massive event for the crypto community for 2024. A few of us from the Moonbeam Foundation will actually be out there. Myself and Aaron from this call will be out there. We'll be hanging out with a lot of our existing dApp developers. We'll be hanging out with a lot of our community. We'll hopefully be speaking with a lot of the new expansion potential partners, like Aaron mentioned, through the AVS space. We'll be spending half a day or a day out at DoomCon as well. So all around the analytics and what's actually happening in the industry from an analytics standpoint. We have plans to be at some of the events that are AVS focused, DeFi focused, gaming focused, RWA focused, DeepIn focused. So everything that aligns to our core pillars. And if anybody out there is planning on being at DevCon and would love to meet up, feel free to reach out to any of us. My DMs are open on Twitter, not really on Telegram. So feel free to reach out or reach out to the Moonbeam account, and we'd be glad to set up some time.
Anyone else? All right. If no other questions, I think we can kind of directionally wrap this up here. So I'm going to review some of the key highlights from the Q3 report, what we talked about on this call. I'll hand it off to everyone to kind of have some parting words, and then we'll be on our way. So just to recap, as of July 2024, Moonbeam had among the largest developer ecosystems across the entire crypto landscape. Total developers were up 26% year over year, and developer activity has been steadily increasing. I like to say developer activity is a leading signal where most of crypto metrics these days are lagging indicators. So on top of that, tons of activity with kind of Moonbeam routed liquidity. We saw $30 million passed, indicating a lot of inflows to the ecosystem. Moonbeam stablecoin supply increased 16% quarter over quarter. This was primarily driven by an increase in USDC supply. Moonbeam's been very heavy in the gaming sector. They had a strategic investment in Nemus, which has over 1 million monthly active players, and that was done via the Moonbeam Innovation Fund. Lastly, Moonbeam introduced plans for a strategic expansion into the Ethereum ecosystem. We talked about that somewhat at length on this call, and that's a really exciting, huge opportunity that Moonbeam's going to look to capitalize on. So, yeah, if anyone wants to chat about that or any parting points here, I see someone asked about the Nemus tournament, so maybe that's a good place to pick it up from.
Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, definitely hoping people kind of show up for that. I mean, it's launching in 2 to 3 weeks, and I think it'll be a lot of fun. There'll be an opportunity to try different games on Moonbeam and win some prizes. And the intent is also just to continue to grow that. So we already have like the next 2-3 games lined up for integration. So the stable of games that will be part of the tournament is going to increase over as things progress, basically. So yeah, so definitely keep an eye on that. It's it's a good way to have some fun.
Hey, one thing I'll just add is that, I do want to thank sort of our community, our broader community, and really the extended community, the Moonwell community and the communities of all the dApps deployed on Moonbeam. It really is wonderful to work with such an amazing community, and the engagement that we see, in governance or the various programs that we have, and that's maybe something that didn't sort of bubble up in the Messari report, but I think we really do have an amazing community, and I just want to give some props and thanks to the community members out there.
I'll add one more piece to that, because it would be amiss if I didn't end off by saying build here, grow anywhere. And, we have a very thriving ecosystem of dApp developers. We have about 200 dApps live today. And those that have really taken on board that mantra of being able to use Moonbeam as this liquidity gateway to other ecosystems, pretty much like what Luke and the Moonwell team have done exceptionally well. It's been great spending the time with Luke, and I appreciate everything he's done, and he's a great advocate for what we're building. So we welcome more and more dApps to follow in the footsteps of Moonwell. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate all the kind words. Yeah, it's been great building the Moonbeam ecosystem, and we really appreciate this sort of connected contracts vision and how we've been able to kind of connect from Moonbeam to other ecosystems, and it's been really phenomenal to see the growth. So thank you to everyone in the Moonwell community for kind of growing alongside us, and it's great to be here today.
Yep. Thanks for everyone joining today. For the 1,500 plus who hopped in, hope you learned something. Ryan, Sicko, Aaron, Luke, thanks for running this. And until next time, guys, cheers.
Thanks.
Thanks, everyone.